By the spring of 1891, Bob Dalton had already learned something that never quite leaves you once you see it. The law does not move fast. It moves in habits. It moves the same way every day, at the same places, with the same people doing the same things. Bob had learned that wearing a badge. He had stood on platforms as a deputy U.S. Marshal, watched trains slow, watched guards stretch and settle into routine, watched the moment when alertness slipped into assumption. He knew how long it took a man to decide whether to reach for a gun. He knew when authority was real and when it was just muscle memory. When he stopped being a lawman, he didn't stop thinking like one. On May 9, 1891, near Wharton in the Indian Territory, the Santa Fe train eased down exactly the way it always did. Steam hissed, iron screamed, and the prairie lay open and indifferent on all sides. Bob stepped forward without raising his voice. Witnesses later said that was the strange part, how calm it was. No shouting, no panic, just a gun where a badge used to be, and a guard who understood immediately what that meant. Money moved from the express car into waiting hands. The train rolled on. They rode away listening for pursuit that never came. The take was modest, about $1,200 split between 5 men, but that wasn't what mattered. That money didn't buy luxury. It bought ease, fresh horses instead of pushed ones, ammunition they didn't have to count, food that wasn't measured out. It bought the feeling that this was a choice, not a corner they'd been backed into. That feeling is dangerous. It convinces you you're in control. Newspapers reported the robbery with surprise. Lawmen responded with embarrassment. 200 men were said to have ridden out looking for the Daltons. Rewards climbed. Nothing came of it. Near Leliaeta, the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad train carried payroll money, the kind meant to be handed out in small envelopes to men who would never see it. When the strong box opened and they saw nearly $19,000 inside, it changed the temperature of the moment. $19,000 in 1891 wasn't an abstract number. A good house could be had for $1,000, maybe $2. A horse for $50. A year's wages for a laborer might be $400. What sat in front of them represented 10 or 15 houses, decades of work, the kind of money that could let a man disappear. No one said they could quit, but everyone understood it. After that robbery, the gang fractured briefly. Some men complained about pay and left. Others drifted back when the planning resumed. This wasn't a tight brotherhood yet. It was opportunity pulling people in and pushing them out. Bob, meanwhile, spent freely, gambling, women, the kind of spending that looks careless but is really declarative. He was announcing to himself that this life worked. By the summer of 1892, the railroads tried to fight back with planning instead of money. At Red Rock, they sent out a train heavy with armed guards, even darkening the cars to hide how many men were inside. Bob noticed the darkness. He didn't like it. He let that train pass. It wasn't a dramatic victory. No shots fired, but it mattered more than any gunfight. It told Bob something he would not unlearn. The people chasing him were reacting. He was choosing, and choice always felt faster than reaction. On July 14, 1892, the train they stopped there came armed. 8 guards, rifles ready, waiting for exactly what happened next. The gang didn't rush. They unloaded the express car and sat on a bench near the station, rifles across their knees, waiting as the armed cars rolled closer. When the shooting started, it was chaos. Nearly 200 rounds fired. Wood splintered, glass shattered. Passengers flattened themselves against the floor, hands over their heads, praying to be overlooked. In the middle of it, a stray bullet hit Dr. W.L. Goff, a local physician sitting on a drugstore porch. He wasn't resisting. He wasn't involved. He was simply there. He died later. The gang escaped again, this time with around $18,000. But something had shifted. Newspapers stopped flirting with the romance of it. Towns stopped watching from behind curtains. Railroads offered $5,000 rewards per man, an enormous sum meant to turn anyone with a rifle into a hunter. Bob felt it. He didn't say it, but he knew the margin was gone. The pattern had changed. On October 5, 1892, the Daltons rode into Coffeyville, Kansas, Bob's hometown, with a plan so audacious it bordered on defiance. 2 banks, at the same time, in broad daylight, something no outlaw had ever done. He wanted to do more than get rich. He wanted to be remembered. He wanted to beat Jesse James at his own game. They wore false beards and new coats, but familiarity cuts both ways. Someone recognized a walk. Someone noticed a gun. A man named Alec McKenna stepped close enough to be sure, and then shouted that the bank was being robbed. This wasn't lawmen responding. This was a town deciding. Rifles came out from under counters. Men took positions behind barrels and wagons. Inside the banks, cashiers stalled, pointing to time locks that wouldn't open for 10 minutes, buying precious seconds. Outside, the streets filled with armed citizens. Bob Dalton fell in the street he'd grown up on. Grat fell nearby. Bill Powers didn't make it far. Dick Broadwell crawled away bleeding, understanding exactly how it would end. Emmett Dalton, the youngest, was shot 23 times and left for dead. 4 townspeople died too, including the city marshal. Ordinary men who woke up expecting nothing remarkable from the day. Emmett lived, barely. He went to prison, sentenced to life, served 14 years, and was pardoned in 1907. He married, he wrote books, he told the story from the only position left to him, the one who survived. Bill Dalton, who hadn't ridden at Coffeyville, later joined the Doolin gang. When he was killed near Ardmore, 9 federal marshals were indicted for his death. None were ever tried. No courtroom reckoning, no verdict, just silence. The Daltons didn't fall because they were fools. They fell because they believed their momentum meant the world would keep moving the way it had. It didn't. The rails stayed. The guns quieted. Oklahoma edged toward statehood. It closed with bodies in the street, money left behind, and questions no one bothered to answer.